The IRS Commissioner Chuck Reddick told lawmakers that before filing season even began, the IRS predicted that returns would be delayed this year, but the backlog should be cleaned before the end of the year. Taxpayers can track the status of their tax refunds using the IRS Where's My Refund tool. In the past, this tool could only be used to track the current tax year, but it was recently upgraded so that users can track this year's and the previous 2 years' refund. The IRS paid out $3.3 billion in interest to taxpayers in fiscal year 2021. That's triple the interest the agency paid in 2015. And President Biden conceded this week that he didn't understand how big of an effect the shutdown of baby formula and recalls would have on the baby formula supply chain until April. His admission came moments after formula manufacturers told him during a White House roundtable that they knew immediately how bad the shortages could get. The White House has previously said it had been working on addressing the shortages since February. And Biden responding to questions about how quickly the administration acted, claimed, "I don't think anybody anticipated the impact of the facility. Once we learned the extent of it and how broad it was, we kicked everything into gear." The National Economic Council director worked to explain later how the situation had devolved into the current crisis. And speaking on CNN, Brian Deese faulted the supply chain as too sluggish in coming to an agreement with the government on steps to reopen the plant, citing the delay as exacerbating the situation. The top advisor said that Biden had been informed of the looming problem once it became clear, even though the other officials inside the White House had worked on the issue earlier. The IRS is actually taking some big action to help taxpayers across the country. Democrats are criticizing President Biden for not taking enough action to help the American people. Many lawmakers in Congress are pushing the Biden administration to take immediate action on inflation. And according to Democratic Representative Ro Khanna, Joe Biden can do more to fight inflation and needs to take action soon. Ro Khanna criticized Biden on inflation during an interview with the New York Times. He argued that the president's solutions to inflation are not good enough. Khanna stated, "I support the president's effort, but we need a bolder vision and faster action. To meet the moment, Biden should convene an emergency task force and power to lower prices and address shortages." Representative Khanna went on to say that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and many others comprise the task force, along with representatives of state and local governments and business leaders. Khanna argues that the task force could actually lower prices by purchasing food and fuel during global price dips and reselling it cheaply to Americans. Biden laid out his three-point plan to address inflation. The plan largely called on the Federal Reserve and Congress to handle the issue. However, there is little executive action on Biden's part. The plan shows limits on what the U.S. presidents can do to address economic issues like inflation. Everybody, the U.S. economy recorded its strongest growth in nearly 4 decades, fueled by trillions of dollars in government stimulus and easy monetary policies that kept borrowing costs near zero. While the crisis relief efforts helped keep in households and helped to bring unemployment from a high of 15% down to 3.6% in just 2 years, it also fueled rapid consumer demand that was exacerbated already sky-high inflation. A Labor Department report last month showed the consumer price index jumped 8.3% in April, underscoring that inflationary pressures in the economy remain very strong. On top of that, gas prices hit another record high, with a gallon of gas on average now costing $4.71. That is up 40% from just 1 year ago. The IRS is now putting authority from Congress to fast-track new hires to good use. The IRS announced this week that it's looking to hire more than 4,000 representatives at several agencies across the country. Now, these contact representatives assist taxpayers over the phone. The IRS will hire these employees through its direct hire authority, which will allow it to bring new employees on board within 40 to 45 days, rather than waiting several months. The agency received direct hire authority from Congress in the 2022 spending bill from President Biden in March.
Tuition-free community college. Is there a concerted effort in part of this to try to help that kind of education for communities that have been underserved over the years?
I think the point here is with the total $8 million that were delivered through the community project funding, and the one specifically focused on higher education, is that I see it as a public good, and we should invest in it accordingly. And that is a part of our broader advocacy legislatively and when it comes to our appropriations process, so that we're addressing the deeper problem here. Many people know of my work championing the need for us to cancel student debt by executive action. I've been championing the need for $50,000. We know that will close the racial wealth gap by 30% and alleviate the burden, writ large for those from every walk of life who are burdened by this nearly $2 trillion crisis. grandparents, 76 years old, still paying student loans, parents who took out Parent Plus loans who cannot retire, and a whole generation that can't start a family, grow a family, purchase a home, start a business. But we also have to address, we need broader reforms and investments. The cost of higher education has increased by some 150%. And so we need to federally invest in tuition-free college as a public good, and we should invest in it accordingly. And we also need to make that greater investment in our MSIs, our HBCUs, and we need to expand Pell Grants as well. So, and yes, it is concerted. This project, this process was a very competitive one. This is the first time in a decade that there has been the opportunity even for community project funding. So there were many applications presented from municipalities throughout the 7, and we were so glad that they met the eligibility.
Very important part of the president's. This is a very important part of the president's agenda in getting to that clean energy system that he's been talking about since he walked into the administration. So this is that, and this is a way that we felt that we can act to get moving in that way. I'll come back up front. Go ahead.
On the Summit of the Americas, with the U.S. not inviting Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua for principal reasons, as it's been described, about democracy, does the president feel in any way embarrassed that a neighbor like Mexico is not coming? Does it rise to that level of awkwardness?
Well, let me just first say that the president was aware that when speaking to Obrador, that he wasn't going to attend. He was aware before the press conference was made, before he made his decision to make that announcement. So there was communication there, and he was made aware. Look, we have had candid engagement with the president of Mexico, as well with other regional partners for more than a month regarding the issue of invitations to the summit. It is important to acknowledge that there are a range of views on the question in our, on this question in our hemisphere, as I mentioned earlier. The president's principal position is what we do not believe that dictators should be invited. That said, we look forward to hosting Foreign Secretary Ebrard as the Mexican representative, and we welcome Mexico's contribution to the major summit deliverables. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, to your question, we just don't believe dictators should be invited, and so we don't regret that, and we will stand. The president will stand by his principle. Great. Okay.
There was understandable skepticism, to some degree pessimism, about the ability to get something related to guns over the finish line in the immediate wake of Uvalde. Has that shifted at all inside the White House? Are you moving more towards optimism this could actually get